How would you make the perfect fried egg? Well, if I were a perfectionist and maybe a little obsessive compulsive, I guess I would do it something like this. I get a nice Teflon frying pan, a big one, put a little bacon grease in it. Then I'd get some metal rings about this big around and maybe about that tall and put them in there so that the eggs wouldn't, touch each other. Then I get some eggs and put them in, eat one egg in each one, and then I'd turn the heat on, medium-low or so, and I'd cover it. And I'd wait until it looked like everything was done, but the yolk is still a little bit runny. That I think would be the perfect egg. All right. So how would you make a perfect egg if you were given the same perfect egg if you were given a scrambled egg? Well, first, I would unscramble the egg. Well, of course, that doesn't work. You cannot unscramble an egg. In today's gospel, Simon the Pharisee obviously saw himself as the perfect fried egg. We are to use that analogy. We can tell so in just even that one sentence. If Jesus was a prophet, he would know what kind of woman this is. She's a sinful woman. We can see that he thinks that he is better than Jesus, and of course, nothing like this sinful woman. He thinks he's a perfect fried egg. But when we look at the rest of that gospel, as well as the first reading, we find King David and the sinful woman, and that they're definitely scrambled, aren't they? Definitely scrambled. King David didn't do just some minor things. He did some major things. Like he committed adultery, a major sin. And then to cover up the sin of adultery, he committed murder. Wow. Big stuff. We don't know what the sinful woman did specifically, but we do know that everybody else in the town knew, and they looked at her as the sinful woman. Whatever it was, there was shame and blame on her, and she carried it. Definitely scrambled. One thing we all have to face or deal with in our lives is the fact that we're not perfect, we're never going to be perfect, and that we are all scrambled. We all commit sin. We do make mistakes. So some of them are just mistakes, and some of them are sinful. We know what we're doing. We know it's not supposed to be done, but we do it anyway. Sin. We all have to deal with our sin. We're all scrambled. That's the bad news. Now there's some good news, which is the more significant part. The more significant part is this, that our God is a God of mercy. And he knows how to deal with eggs that have been all scrambled together. He does so like this. Jesus says, do you see this woman? What does God see when he looks at us? Well, we have a pretty good indication in our two readings. The first reading, that King David, what God saw when he looked at David was a great sinner and a great king. And in order for him to continue to be a great king, he needed to recognize his sin, admit it, and ask for forgiveness. And he got that out of the way. Then he could move on to be the great king he was made to be. And that's what he did. And for this sinful woman, whatever it was, she obviously knew her sin, asked for forgiveness, and now was free. And when Jesus says, do you see this woman? What Jesus saw in her was a loving heart. It says that she lives with given great love. She has been forgiven, and now out of that, love just flows out of her to the point where she is taking care of Jesus' feet and honoring him. That's what God does with our scrambledness. with our sin. If you allow me one more reference to eggs, it's like he takes these scrambled, mixed up eggs and makes an omelet out of it, a fine omelet or a delicious souffle. It's what God does. Our God of mercy. If the Lord is present, our past does not have to control our future because of God's mercy. Simon's problem was that he thought he was perfect, but he was really scrambled. We know that for sure because Jesus says, when I came here, you didn't give me some water to wash my feet. You didn't give me the traditional kiss, one each cheek, that they do over there. You do that for anybody who would enter your house. You didn't do that. And finally, you didn't anoint my head, which you did for every guest. You didn't have the common decency to treat me with any respect because of your pride and your feeling of superiority. You're cold-hearted, you're judgmental, you condemn others and think you're great. Now that is what you call sin. And it's a more dangerous sin, you see, because he follows the external rules, but all this is going on inside of him. That is not so well seen, and sometimes not so well seen by ourselves. Simon didn't know how scrambled he was. Now, what he did see was how Jesus treated this sinful woman. There's a chance that in some reflection, if he ever looked at himself with honesty, that he might see his own sin. And then he might begin to trust this Jesus who treated this woman with such mercy and compassion, making her into a great omelet or a fine souffle. A pundit once wrote, he said, there are basically two kinds of people in the world. The first kind walks into a room and says, rejoice, I'm here. Know anybody like that? That was what Simon the Pharisee was, thinking he's the greatest. The other kind walks into the same room and says, ah, there you are. Walked into the room where Jesus was, and she, would say, ah, there you are, Jesus, the God of mercy, the one who forgives and can heal my soul. We could only be like that and say to God, ah, God, there you are, the God of mercy, the one who can make something out of my scrambled life.